Good evening, fellow plastic model builders. This is Dan Leone on Plastic Model Building 101, building the Tamiya Mig-15. In my last chapter, what I did was I washed and prepped all the parts and prior to internal painting and also prior to assembly. Now, you can do part washing in one of two ways. One, you can wash them in a mild hand detergent. Dawn, you can find this at any dollar store, supermarket. Very inexpensive. It'll cost you between $2 to $3. I also have in a spray bottle, of course there's not much left, but this is called Plastic Prep, made by Polyscale. It's alcohol based, and I spray this on my model and let it air dry. It dries quicker because it's alcohol based. Now, if you don't want to do the soap and water routine, if you do the soap and water routine, let's back up a little bit. If you do the soap and water routine, just be careful when you wash the parts and make sure they don't go down the drain. Also, if you rinse, if you have them in a sink, make sure it's very well plugged, and when you wash the parts, have both sinks, and then one for clean water and one with the soapy water. And once you brush them all down with a toothbrush or an electric toothbrush, and you rinse them down over the clear water, the clean water, and make sure your parts don't fall into the sink, preferably where the drain is, because if that happens, then you're SOL. So anyway, put that away. Okay, now we're going to move on to assembly. I have here my Mig-15 instructions. They come in different languages: English, French, Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, a whole bit. So anyway, these instructions are pretty straightforward. As you can see, it has all the exploded drawing views of everything, and also a paint guide of all the internal parts. Well, we'll get that. We'll get to that later. Okay. Okay. So what I did was everything's laying down right here, and then what I'm going to do is what I'm going to start doing is we're going to start assembling the model pieces. So without any ado, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start assembling the model according to pieces. Now, what I like to do is when I start clipping all the parts and pieces, you always want to have a groom grip. I'm sorry. And then once you clip it, just be careful not to let it shoot off across the room, because that can happen. It can hit you in the eye, or it can go into the part's eating rug. That's what I call my rug, because I've lost many a small plastic pieces in the rug, and believe me, it's not fun. Okay, once we cut off the piece, we're going to get our little hobby knife, and we're just going to kind of cut off the little plastic stud. Now, be careful when you're doing this, because you don't want to cut your finger or your thumb. So do like this, and just cut it off. And then what we'll do is we'll have a little sanding stick here. I have a little sanding stick, and I'm just going to kind of clean it up a little bit. Okay. All right, done all that. Now we're going to go ahead and put the pilot seat in there. and we're going to repeat the same process. And like I said, just be very careful when you're cutting the parts and pieces, because one little mishap, you can badly cut your finger or your thumb. So you just want to be very careful. Okay, once this is done, we're going to go ahead and cement. We're going to go ahead and cement the pilot seat to the cockpit floor. So, in order to do that, I have this is a glue I highly recommend, Model Master, and it also has a nice little, see, back in the old school days, we used to just have the tubes of glue, and of course, without the little metal line right here, tube right here, it got all over the place. But you don't really have that problem anymore. So what I'm going to do is, this is what I'm going to do. Put that right there. Put a little some in the back, so you can see, and then I'm going to put the seat in like so. Okay, the seat is firmly in the cockpit. Now, what I also am going to do, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to do a little bit of painting, especially around the cockpit, like for the seat cushions, and also for the instrument and dials on the side. So with doing that, I have a little brush. I have a little brush like this. Any small little brush will do. And I have some, let's see here, and I have some black paint, because most aircraft seats were painted black, especially in Soviet bloc or Axis, or any seat, Soviet bloc or Axis aircraft. Sometimes seats are painted black. So what I do, and then what I like to do is, with my paint, I want to go ahead and stir it up real good. Now you can also shake it too. So first things first, we'll just go ahead and give it a shake. We'll give it a shake. And it's also, when you are painting or putting models together, it's always good to have very well adequate lighting as well too. Now, as you can see here, I went ahead and painted the cockpit, the seat, the pilot seat, and also we're going to paint I'll go ahead and get the headrest as well too. We always want to look at our instructions and make sure that everything, because everything goes according in a proper sequence. So sometimes it can be a pain if there's another part on another tree, and sometimes you have a hard time finding the part. Let's see here. And sometimes it's kind of hard to do. So. Here we go. There we go. Okay. All right. The good thing about these paints, they're water-based. If you have enamel paints, that's fine. But I always go with water-based acrylic paints, because acrylic paints, they're very easy to clean. And also, here's some acrylic thinner you want to put in your water, and also put this in your airbrush too. And it's and you can get this at any hobby shop, and it's very, very inexpensive. Now, before I sign off, I'd like to show you something real quick. One thing Tamiya has provided, and is very phenomenal, the nose weight. And you always want to make sure this is inside the cockpit, because if not, most model kits do not provide a nose weight. So guess what? If you're going to have the gear down, your airplane's going to be a tail dragger. Now, in the event, if you ever come across a kit and it requires nose weight, you can go to any fishing store, fishing tackle shop, and buy fishing rates, or any gunsmith gun store, and buy little BBs, little pellets, and can put it in there. Now, I would be very careful. Make sure they're accurately weighed, because one thing you don't want to do is, if it weighs too much, it's going to cause a strain on the plastic landing gear, and over time it's going to bend and it's going to break. So always make sure that it has a enough sufficient weight to have a balance on all three gears. So anyway, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and continue on assembling all this. And once all this is assembled, because I don't want to bore you too much of assembly, so when I come to a stopping point, and I'll show you all my work that I've been doing and show you the techniques that I've used, and then we'll go from there. Anyway, this is Dan Leone, Plastic Model Building 101, building the Tamiya Mig-15. Y'all have a good day.